Hey everyone, it's DinaKalmeta here. And right now, the Middle East is sliding into a showdown. Israel has stated that they will hit Iran even without the United States backing. In the meantime, the United States has sent over 100 C-17s into the region, and some are saying on Desert Storm levels. And on top of all of that, the United States and Russia's New START treaty has expired. And now the UK is saying that they're not sure they'll be able to withstand a conflict with Russia without the United States backing. So a lot to break down. Let's dive in.
So let's start with Iran and this report from the most important news. And the headline reads, Kick-off event incoming. Israel is going to attack Iran even if the U.S. does not. A major showdown in the Middle East now appears to be inevitable. The tyrants that are running Iran have taken tens of thousands of lives from protesters, and they have deployed ballistic missiles that travel so fast that they can reach Israel in just 10 minutes. It has been reported that they have been developing biological and chemical warheads as well, just for their long-range ballistic missiles. And during negotiations with the Trump administration, they are absolutely refusing to make any significant compromises. They are calling President Trump's bluff, and they are daring him to act. At this stage, it is not entirely clear what Trump intends to do. But even if Trump doesn't pull the trigger, Israeli officials are warning that they will attack Iran anyway. Israelis know all about the Khorramshahr 4 missiles that Iran now possesses. And they know all about the unconventional warheads that could potentially represent an apocalyptic threat to major Israeli cities. So they aren't just going to sit back and do nothing if President Trump ultimately decides against a U.S. military operation. And according to the Jerusalem Post, Israeli officials are openly admitting that Israel will attack Iran alone if necessary. One source said that we told the Americans we will strike alone if Iran crosses the red line we set on ballistic missiles. This is a major bombshell. When Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu visits the White House on Wednesday, Iran's ballistic missile program will be a major topic of discussion. Of course, Trump would have preferred a diplomatic solution, but the Iranians are insisting that they must be allowed to continue to enrich uranium. And during the negotiations that took place in Oman, they wouldn't even talk about their ballistic missile program. The Iranians are drawing a line in the sand. They will not stop enriching uranium. They will not even consider negotiating with us regarding their ballistic missile program. And they will never stop funding proxies throughout the region. Michael goes on to say there is not going to be a negotiated solution. That means that President Trump has a decision to make. And the U.S. military, well, the buildup continues. We are being told that more than 100 military cargo planes have already traveled to the Middle East. Of course, this doesn't mean that there is a guarantee that President Trump will pull the trigger. As we have seen, he can be persuaded to change his mind at any time. But if we do attack, the Iranians are warning that they will retaliate by striking U.S. bases in the region. And the Iranians have also repeatedly warned that major Israeli cities will be primary targets. In fact, a huge sign in Iran is showing specific cities inside Israel that will be targeted. There appears that there will be no turning back now. If President Trump refuses to attack, the Israelis are going to do it anyway. And once an attack begins, the Iranians are promising to hit back extremely hard. The final chapter of the Great Middle East War is nearly upon us, and the clock is ticking. Washington is tightening sanctions, especially on the networks that help Iran sell energy and bring in money. And it's not just aimed at Iran. The message is also for anyone doing business with Iran. This isn't just about being regional. If things blow up, it could hit U.S. forces, allied countries, shipping routes, energy prices, meaning it could spread well beyond the Middle East very fast. Now, with that said, Friday morning, the United States issued a travel warning for Iran amid the gathering of nations for negotiations that happened in Oman. They basically told people to leave Iran now. So there's that. But this brings us to our next piece of the puzzle. Iran doesn't stand alone. In Asia, the Iran issue shows up inside a much bigger tug of war, and it overlaps with trade in Taiwan. In a call between President Trump and China's president, a bunch of pressure points collided. U.S. economic demands, China's position on Taiwan, and America pushing China to pull back from Iran. From Washington's perspective, Iran can't resist pressure as easily if major partners stop helping. And China is the biggest factor because of money and trade. But Beijing sees things differently. China's main priority is stability on its own terms, and Taiwan is a red line for them. So even when Iran comes up, China tends to talk about sovereignty and long-term strategy, not quick concessions. Meanwhile, trade is the daily battlefield, the thing that shifts week to week and moves markets. Big picture, these issues are starting to merge into one map. Iran, tariffs, Taiwan, trade, all tied together.
The Middle East is a flashpoint, but we also got to keep our eyes on Russia and China. We have watched their relationship grow over the years, economically, militarily, and diplomatically. And now that the New START agreement has expired, we could honestly see an arms race. And so that's why I think President Trump has asked China to join the agreement. But here's the thing. China doesn't want to join. And without China and Russia in agreement, we can see a very dangerous world ahead because they are one of the largest nuclear powers in the world.
The New START agreement between Russia and the United States, which was meant to govern the development of nuclear weapons, has just expired. The Kremlin nonetheless claimed to be disappointed that Putin and Trump had not agreed to an extension of the agreement or its replacement with a more detailed document. But President Trump has refused to sign another nuclear development treaty with Russia, arguing that the Chinese government should be brought in for a trilateral agreement, given Beijing's rapid and unchecked nuclear weapons development. But the Chinese president has refused, at least at this point, to join the nuclear agreement with the United States and Russia. And in fact, China's president and Russia's president held a virtual meeting last week in which they celebrated their countries' close bonds and vowed to expand high-level exchanges, trade, and diplomacy. This meeting occurred within hours of the U.S. president and the Chinese president's phone call on the eve of the expiration of the New START agreement. So very interesting timing. No nuclear deal, and Russia and China continue to build a stronger relationship with their nations, leaving out the United States in the cold. But while we're on the conversation of China has expressed support for Cuba's sovereignty after the U.S. labeled the island's socialist government a security threat. The Chinese foreign minister stated that China firmly supports Cuba in safeguarding its national sovereignty and security, opposes unwarranted interference by external forces, meaning the United States, and rejects any attempt to deprive the Cuban people of their rights to survival and development. And China also added that it is ready to support Cuba to the best of its ability. President Trump last week declared a national emergency in relations with Cuba, accusing the island of aligning itself with hostile countries and malign actors. He claimed that Cuba's military cooperation and contact with Russia and China and Iran, as well as the Palestinian armed group Hamas and the Lebanese group Hezbollah, directly threaten U.S. national security. Trump's executive order said that the United States has zero tolerance for the communist Cuban regime. The Cuban president said that they are not a threat to the security of the United States, and they do not protect these illegal groups. Of course, I can't say that particular name here on YouTube, but you get my point. So we have a little bit of tension here. President Trump, of course, wants to protect the United States and our sovereignty, and he sees Cuba and their relationship with these other nations, our adversaries, as a threat. And China here is saying, hey, I'm going to protect Cuba whether you like it or not. So definitely a very tense situation there. And speaking of tense, Express News is reporting that Britain has been issued a grim warning over its ability to independently defend its skies from Russian missiles. Carlo Massala, a professor of international politics, said that without the United States' support, key UK cities are under serious threat from Russian strikes. The expert warned of how Russia is already significantly replenishing its stocks. including building roughly 500 new tanks and upgrading others. He said that the West has underestimated its vulnerability to Russia, which boasts a strong arsenal of long-range missiles. He went on to say that the Russians have some military advantages that we don't have in Europe. If the U.S. doesn't help us, we don't have enough air defenses. So if Russia sends those ballistic missiles and their cruise missiles to Great Britain or Germany, neither would be able to protect its major cities. The head of the armed forces in December said talks were underway about new air defenses for the UK, but Russia's capability and willingness to use ballistic and cruise missiles has become more apparent. And the threats coming out of Russia, particularly from Putin's closest allies, are terrifying. And I would show the headline here, but unfortunately I can't on YouTube. But you get my point. So they're warranted in their concern in regards to Russia. Now, with that said, Ukraine and Russia reportedly working on a U.S. set deadline to reach a peace deal that would end the conflict. On Friday, the Ukrainian president told reporters that the U.S. had set a June deadline for Moscow and Kyiv to strike an agreement, according to the Associated Press. Now, what's going on with Greenland? Well, France and Canada made announcements that they will open consulates in the Danish Autonomous Territories capital. This apparently is seen to be a victory, according to Jeppe Stratsberg, a political scientist at the University of Greenland, saying that there is a great appreciation for the support against what Trump has said in wanting Greenland as a United States territory. The French president announced plans to open a consulate during a visit to Nuuk in June, where he expressed Europe's solidarity with Greenland and criticized Trump's ambitions. So we have Canada and France coming together and again pushing the United States out in the cold. But it doesn't end there. President Trump has threatened to block the opening of a bridge between Michigan and Ontario, claiming Canada is trying to take advantage of America. He's also calling for compensation at the latest flashpoint in the simmering tensions between the United States and its northern neighbor. The Gordie Howe International Bridge, a 6-lane bridge between Detroit and Windsor, Ontario, that has cost about $4.7 billion to build, has been under construction since 2018 and is due to open early this year. But on Monday, President Trump said he would not allow it to open in a post on Truth Social, saying that Canada had treated the U.S. very unfairly for decades and that the U.S. would not benefit from the project. His words were, "I will not allow this bridge to open until the United States is fully compensated for everything we have given them." And also importantly, Canada treats the United States with the fairness and respect that we deserve. Meanwhile, the French president had some words for President Trump. He said that President Trump wants to dismember the EU. He said the EU risked being swept aside in as little as 3 years by the US and China unless the bloc became less dependent on the superpowers. He also said that European children's brains are not for sale as he pushed for a social media ban that is likely to anger the U.S. government and tech companies. The French president issued the warning on the eve of the Munich Security Conference, where world leaders will discuss defense and alliances.
So certainly a lot happening in the world right now, especially as it concerns the Middle East. We want to keep a very close eye on Israel because Israel is God's prophetic time clock. But in a whole, we are absolutely watching wars and rumors of wars and distress of nations. But I want to hear from you guys. Tell me what you think about what's going on in the Middle East, or perhaps Russia and China. Do you think that there will be a new nuclear agreement? Do you think China will eventually join? Let me know in the comments. Also, when you have a free moment, come and visit me on my social media pages as well as my website. But thank you everybody for watching, and until next time, God bless and stay safe.